During the Industrial Revolution, Britain's economy had begun to boom. To keep it booming, the City of London needed a whole new set of financial machinery.
The Bank of England was already in place. The stock exchange over there got going in 1773, and in 1771 Lloyd's underwriters established their own premises just down the road. So the city as we know it has started to emerge, and these new commercial mechanisms need a new type of worker to operate them. These workers became the backbone of the emerging middle class.
They may have wanted to work in the city, but they wanted to live somewhere else.
These industrial workers migrated from the country to the urban centres. The towns and cities that Mitchell and Kenyon were filming had mushroomed. But people either lived in the city or the countryside. Much of the suburban sprawl that we're so familiar with hadn't been built yet. This film, shot from the top of a tram in the outskirts of Blackpool, shows you could travel from the open countryside to the city centre within minutes. Mitchell and Kenyon filmed cities all over, from Blackpool to this Belfast tram. They found inventive ways to film metropolitan life. Motorcars were still a great rarity. They were out of reach for most of the population. In 1900, there were lots of traffic jams. It was just the modes of transport that were different. With no traffic lights, it was the policemen who had to keep the pedestrians safe and guide the traffic on this Manchester High Street. It was a time of new technologies. Horse-drawn trams were on the way out, and electrified trams were the latest thing. In this film of Bradford, new tram tracks are being added to the network. The open top-deck fare was half that of travelling in the downstairs saloon, and for women, negotiating getting on board in a long skirt needed a particular skill. Travel was being democratised. Getting around the city was easier than ever before. The latest design, the safety bicycle, with two wheels the same size, had recently been introduced. And learner drivers were trying to handle two wheels rather than four. Nottingham's trams again today, but the view is somewhat different to that of Mitchell and Kenyon's film shot in August 1902. It's a busy lunchtime in the city centre. On the left, we can see one of the more recent additions to metropolitan life. Dining rooms for the city workers who didn't have time to go home for lunch. The extraordinary thing is that the citizens of Nottingham have not changed much, but they are subtly different. All the men wear hats, most have moustaches, and all the women are wearing long skirts. People lived in the street much more. They had to because many of their houses were so cramped. But they possessed the pavement and the road much more. Without cars dominating the streets, they simply strolled around. You get that sense from these films, don't you? People wandering quite happily up and down the streets. It's a real part of their life, a more pleasant place to be. people are much the same, but the individuality of Nottingham 100 years ago has sadly been diminished by corporate blandness that many city centres have these days. It's the small details in these films that are so striking, like street furniture, lovely cast iron street lamps and great gas lanterns, wonderful features we now rarely see. Much of Nottingham has been redeveloped since Mitchell and Kenyon's films were shot. But some parts of the Edwardian city still remain, if you look hard enough. Football was a new passion for working men, even though it had been developed as an elite public school sport. By the end of the 19th century, it has swept the whole nation, particularly the industrial north.
The reason why the football terraces shown in the films are so full is because working hours had been reduced. Most workers now had Saturday afternoons off as well as Sundays, so they could come and attend the games. In addition, wages had been increased so workers could afford the minimum entrance fee of sixpence. So they came here in their thousands, helping to create the Northern League of clubs, including Newcastle, Manchester United and Liverpool, teams that still dominate the Premier League.
This scratchy, foggy film shows Burnley running out of the Players' Tunnel. But forget its quality, this film is a world exclusive. The second team is Manchester United. This is the first ever film of the most famous football club in the world. Mitchell and Kenyon filmed the match at Turf Moor, Burnley on the 6th of December 1902. Manchester United are in their darker shirts, red as today. Burnley in lighter green, before they changed their famous claret and blue. Manchester United are playing in their very first season as Man U. They had been called Newton Heath and had almost gone bankrupt the previous year. A rich local brewer rescued the club and nearly renamed it Manchester Central before this was rejected as sounding too much like a railway station. The film was meant to be shown at the Burnley Mechanics Institute that evening, but Manchester United won 2-0, so the film was suppressed, the showing cancelled. The film has never been seen by an audience until now. As Mitchell and Kenyon's film business was taking off, so did a new part of British life, leisure time. Sunday was, as ever, the day of rest. Here in West Park in Hull, it is a sunny Sunday in April, just after church. It is 12:30, and the congregation is gaily showing off their Sunday best. And what Sunday best it is! The women have fantastic floral arrangements on their hats, and all possible care has been lavished on the children. The rich could afford to dress up, but for poorer people their outfits might have spent all week in the pawn shop. On Friday evening, after receiving the week's pay, they would retrieve their smart clothes for the Sunday promenade. But as time off for holidays became more common, there was more and more calling for best clothes. Easter and Christmas were already religious holiday fixtures. Here in Preston, Each Easter Monday, the town's tradition, which continues to this day, was to roll hard-boiled eggs down the hill. In those days, instead of chocolate eggs, real ones were used. They were a symbol of rebirth and Christ's resurrection. But for most people, it was simply a great excuse for a party in the park. The man in the top hat throws his eggs in the air. But these girls hold tightly onto theirs. Even the baby in the pram is showing off her egg. The man who had thrown the eggs was a professional showman. He was amongst 30 or so entertainers who commissioned Mitchell and Kenyon to shoot or develop films for them.